Oh, good. All right. Obviously, Thursday practice, so we were able to go outside, do a lot of really good things out there. I thought our guys had good energy. As far as injury-wise, I don't know where it's going to land. On Saturday, we'll make some final decisions, but obviously some key guys got injured in that Oregon game. Very, very limited on their comeback, right, where they are on Saturday. We'll make that decision when it happens, but the guys have been stepping into their position, have been really, really good. Very excited to see a couple new faces perform. This Saturday is obviously a game that Dad's Day is one thing, but to honor the military services, I thought Jake Rosh, again, our equipment manager, who's been on fire all year with the helmets, the Michigan game with the throwback uniforms. He designed a military helmet that recognizes all the services, but also in the middle stripe we'll have 189 names of all of the fallen alumni from the University of Illinois, and then on the side they'll also have 10 stars that symbolize the 10 former football players that fell in service in World War II, 9 during World War II and 1 during the Vietnam War, which was Bruce Capel. All right, so just a lot of great history. Sharing that with our players has been pretty awesome. So excited to have another game back here in Memorial. I think Saturday's weather is supposed to be a lot better than it was today, although we got a pretty good weather out there today. So excited to have a large crowd, have them impact the game like they did against Michigan and several others. So excited for that. With that, open up.
Have any of those guys who left Oregon, have they been able to practice this week?
The guys, you mean the players? It's been a mixed bag. There's been guys that are out there. I think we're just kind of grouping all 5, 6 of those guys. By Big Ten policy, we'll send out the 2-hour report beforehand and let it roll.
You hinted at Xavier being on the watch list on Monday. Just what do you feel like he's done to get that recognition?
Well, obviously played. I think a year ago, so Xavier came here without a scholarship, right? Like crazy, right? Like he didn't have a scholarship because of COVID. All that went into it, we kind of talked to him and his family and said, hey, back then the scholarships rules were a little bit different, so he came in technically as we called it back then a blue shirt, right? But we knew as soon as we had a scholarship, we gave him one. As soon as he got on campus, saw what he's all about, we gave him one as soon as we had one. That freshman year, he played in all of the games, but then his first start came at Michigan, and I think Taz got hurt the week before, and him to go out there and play the way he did in that game, I kind of knew we had something. And then last year, obviously did a lot of really good things, but I think the ACL injury at the end of the year last year kind of gave him this moment of, hey, it's always good when it's good, but how am I going to be when it got bad, right? And came back from that rehab, came back into fall camp and exploded onto the scene, especially those first 3 or 4 games. Then he had a couple games where he's a little bit banged up. His resiliency, his toughness, his intelligence. Xavier is probably on our football team one of the most intelligent players pre-snap, just being able to diagnose what they're doing, how they're doing it. And then he's just got really a good instinct, right? Really good football awareness, understanding. The good news is, as good as he is, I don't think it's even close to what it's going to be.
Coach, your record against Minnesota is pretty well documented. Is there some common thread through all those 10 games between the two schools? Obviously,
you know what? I don't even remember them all. I mean, obviously, a lot was when I was at Wisconsin. Just got tremendous respect for him. Even going back to when I took the Wisco job, there was there was over the axe, right? So that was a huge. We didn't have the axe when I got there, my first year. So we won it when I was a defense coordinator, and it really made a huge impression on me. It sounds like a little thing, but I was a defense coordinator, and we were playing in that game, and I saw some guys that weren't from Minnesota and guys that weren't from Wisconsin go sprinting across that field to go get that axe. And I'll never forget that moment. A guy by the name of Dan Benning and there's a guy by the name of Scott Starsky was a player from St. Louis. And I'm like, if guys from states that aren't involved in this growing up think that much of it, there must be something to it. And even though there's not a trophy game between us and Minnesota, that's always remained in my head. We recruit against Minnesota a lot. PJ stands for a lot of the same things we do, and academics, integrity, the people they are. So there's a lot of this one. I think the biggest thing, it's a rematch game. This is number 5 of 6. So I think that's important. But yeah, my personal record, just like really in the Michigan game, I didn't talk about it, right? I don't really ever talk about that because it kind of takes away from what the moment is.
Sure. Has there been any cool or neat moments with those DBs that maybe finished that Oregon game that know this week in practice?
Well, yeah, Jaheim finished, right? And he's a guy that actually had blood in his mouth during the game. He got hit and cut a hole in his mouth, right? And
that's
he
not cool and neat.
Well, no, it's not cool and neat, especially his mom hears that, right? But he just kept playing, and then they stitched it up afterwards. And here's a guy, like we literally were going to have to move a guy around at another position just to get someone out there if somebody went down at that corner position, right? With Torrey went down, Caleb Patterson went down, and T. Brooks went down. So, without those three guys, that was getting thin in that room. I've never in my entire head coaching career, been in a situation where we lose your top three guys at a position that, you traditionally only have four guys going to a game playing. I think Jaheim was a bright spot. Obviously, T. Brooks was a really, even though he wasn't playing corner, he stepped in because T. Strain went down and Xavier, we were playing outside, so that put T. Brooks into a really good position.
But I know your roster so different than it was a few years ago. Q-Rod talked about learning from the past.
Yeah.
He had brought up kind of the way 2022 went down at the end of the year, and how that's a learning moment. Like, how've your guys who work or learn from that, and then how can they pass that around?
Great question, except for I kind of always stress, I think T-Raw sends individual messages to guys because he lived it. But one of the things that I've refrained from doing really during my evolution in coaching coming here is you pull bits and pieces from the past, but I don't specifically point to a moment. But I'm sure that T-Raw has, like he is a great leader within that room. But, really going into this year, like I said all along, when we had, almost 30-40% of our roster was new to the room just this year, to draw experiences from someone that didn't live it doesn't really, but I think individually, T-Raw's on our leadership council, right? So like I send leadership council text all the time to guys, like to the group, like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Try to empower them, not try, I am empowering them because their experiences are very good, right? And T-Raw's got a unique thing, right? Because he came to us from Columbus, was at Northwestern, so he's got a lot of Big Ten flavor in his past, but yeah, I think those are a lot of individual conversations within the room.
I mean, your program has grown since then, right? I mean, is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
I hope so. Yeah, I just think, overall we know our roster better than ever. Even the guys that we bring in, you take a guy like Zachary Franklin, who in my opinion has made a huge impact on our program. The reason that we probably had a chance to get him, not only last year, we couldn't get him in academically, so the university said we couldn't, right? But now that he was a grad, we were able to get him in. The relationship he had with Barry, and Barry specifically said one thing to me that I think just rings so true. He's like, Coach, he goes, he's going to need us as much as we need him. And I kind of appreciate that because what Barry was saying is like, we can hold him and help him get better because Zachary Franklin should play in the NFL, right? He should be a guy that should play in the NFL. And I think the growth that he's had from game 1 to now game 9 has been dramatic. And I think that's really awesome. Look at Luke, right? The effect that we've had on his level and his playing ability. A guy like Alec Bryant, even though there's been some ups and downs, he's playing at a high level. It's fun to watch the growth of these guys. And I showed him on Wednesday. This is Dad's Day, right? So I asked our video guys. I always send video, or I send clips, or I send something I see on social media to Joe Maggio. He hates me because I give him text from 5 a.m. till midnight, right? And he always responds, which I feel bad. I keep him awake at times, but. I said, hey, can I have a few pictures of Dad's Day so I could show the guys what it's about? Because some guys, our first Dad's Day, I didn't know what it meant, right? But then I see dads walk down the stairs and I see them crying. I'm like, whoo, this means something, right? So we had, my second year, we had a photographer there and we were taking individualized photos. Sounds like a great idea, but 74 photos takes a long time, right? So we had negated doing that, but one of the photos from that year was Quan Martin with his dad, right? And like I hadn't had the pleasure to meet Quan's dad. I didn't have a chance to recruit him. But when I met him, I'm like, now I know who Quan is because I love Quan. He's probably one of my favorite players in my entire career because of who he is, and what he does. But when I met Quan's dad, I realized that didn't happen by chance, right? Like his dad had poured into him. But so Quan and his dad were front and center, and right behind him was Tip Ryman and his dad. And at that point, Tip was barely playing for us, right? And you guys know Tip's dad is like, I stare at my desk every day. There's a mug that they sent me for his draft party that I wasn't able to go to that like I just have this daily reminder of Tip. But I'm thinking right there, there's two dads that are at Dad's Day with their son who's playing at the University of Illinois. Even though I probably knew it, maybe they knew it some capacity, but now, and then in the back far right was Johnny Newton and his dad. Right, and I'm like, in that photo are three guys now that have been a second rounder, and a third round, and are playing at the highest level. Two of them playing on the hottest team in the NFL. And the Arizona Cardinals love Tip where he's at. Like, those little stories, those little captions, that's what's changed our program, right? Like, I don't know if I had that connection in my first or second year with those guys. But now I can show these guys, hey, this is what's at the end of the rainbow. But if you try to jump to the end of the rainbow, you're never going to get there. That's a long answer.
We'll finish with this one here.
Go back to X. You mentioned,
X.
what he does, Xavier, pre-snap. Talking to him yesterday, he talked about his film study. He didn't want to be unprepared because people were depending on him.
Yeah.
Just what is that maybe level of care from one of your best players? Maybe saying?
Not surprising. So I sent the graphic when he was nominated. I called his mom and dad the night before. We knew the release wasn't going out till 3, Bret, that day. But I just wanted his mom and dad to know what was coming because they're really prideful people, and plus he has a relative that might be coming here as well, right? So I wanted to have them aware of what's going on, and I also sent it to the 2 coaches that first made me aware of him, a guy by the name of Jack Daniels and Dan Good, and I sent them the graphic. I said it all started with a conversation at basketball practice because they told me about him, and then they told me when basketball practice was, so I went and watched him, and I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I want this guy, right? And then since then, Xavier has come in, and I think by learning from others, he watched how other people prepared. He didn't come in doing that, right? But now he knows, like he's literally one of the first guys in our building. Late at night, you'll see him in here. I put together a little clip the other day, and I was showing a certain segment of football where a player aligned and what was happening, and he was literally calling out the routes before they were happening. And he had never seen that tape, right? But he knew by what he had seen and witnessed what was happening, right? So, yeah, his football intelligence, his IQ, his acumen, and the Thorpe guy that came to watch him here earlier in the year was also, I believe, at the Nebraska game, Bret, and saw him compete in that environment. And when you see someone live play at the level he plays at, that's when your opinion really changes.